Welcome back, deep divers. We're diving into some really exciting news from Mars today.
Yeah, this is cool stuff.
Our little buddy Perseverance
Yeah.
has been busy zapping rocks with its laser,
It's
right?
good.
It found something pretty unexpected,
Uh-huh.
these pale-colored rocks
Yeah.
that could actually hold clues about a past on
Right.
Mars
Yep.
that was much more Earth-like.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're talking about a Mars that maybe wasn't always the red planet we know.
Right.
It might have been a bit wetter, a bit warmer,
Mm.
maybe even a bit more hospitable.
So we're basing this deep dive on the work of Roger Reines and his team, right?
Yep.
They published this paper
Uh-huh.
in Nature Communications, Earth and Environment.
It's a fascinating read.
And their findings about these pale rock
Yeah.
have really shaken things up a bit.
Oh, for sure.
Basically, what they're suggesting is that Mars might have had
Right.
liquid water for a long time
Yeah.
and temperatures that were much warmer than what we see today.
Yeah.
And that obviously has huge implications for the possibility of life. Right now.
Absolutely. That's the big question, isn't it?
Yeah.
Was there ever life on Mars?
Mhm.
And these findings definitely make you wonder.
So let's start with the rover itself.
Okay.
How did Perseverance actually come across these rocks?
Well, Perseverance has this awesome tool called SuperCam.
Right.
It's like a high-tech geologist,
Yeah.
It uses a laser to analyze the rocks from a distance.
Very cool.
Roger Wiens, he's a Mars exploration expert over at Purdue University, has been working on this kind of technology for years.
Mhm.
Anyway, SuperCam zapped these rocks,
Right.
and the data came back, and everyone was like, whoa, wait a minute, these are different.
So what was so different? What stood out about them?
Well, first off, they were pale, like really light compared to the typical reddish Martian rocks. That's what initially caught their eye.
Interesting. So they were like, let's check this out.
Exactly.
And then SuperCam analyzes them.
Yep.
And what does it find?
High levels of aluminum. And not just any aluminum, but aluminum specifically associated with this mineral called kaolinite.
Kaolinite. Now, for those of us who aren't geologists,
Right.
what is kaolinite and why is it such a big deal?
Well, think of kaolinite as a type of clay mineral.
Okay.
It forms on Earth in places where you have a lot of water and warmth.
Right.
Like think tropical rainforests, places
Yeah.
with tons of rainfall. It can also form around hot springs in those hydrothermal systems.
So the kinds of environments where life could potentially thrive.
Exactly. That's why this discovery is so exciting.
Because finding kaolinite on Mars suggests that those kinds of conditions might have existed there too.
That's the idea.
And it's not just a hunch. Roger Wiens, he really hit the nail on the head when he said,
What did he say?
these minerals are what's left behind when rock has been in flowing water for eons.
Wow.
That paints a pretty vivid picture, doesn't it?
It really does. It makes you think about ancient rivers and maybe even lakes on Mars.
Yeah, a Mars that was much more dynamic and active than what we see now.
And potentially habitable.
Exactly. Now, the paper also refers to these pale rocks as float rocks. What does that mean exactly?
So float rocks are basically rocks that are just sitting on the surface. They're not part of the underlying bedrock. They've been moved, transported from somewhere else.
Like they're out of place.
Yeah, kind of. Think of them as puzzle pieces that have been scattered around.
And these puzzle pieces are enigmas, as Wien called them.
Yeah, he said they're unlike anything they've ever seen on Mars before.
Which makes you wonder where they came from.
Absolutely. That's the big mystery.
So how do they figure that out?
Well, they need to find the source. They need to find where these rocks originally formed.
And how do they do that?
They need to find them in place, embedded in the bedrock.
Ah.
So far, Perseverance has only found them as these loose float rocks. But if they can track them back to their source, it would be like, aha, now we know the story. And that would tell them a lot more about the history of that region, right?
Exactly.
So besides the kaolinite, did they find anything else interesting in these rocks?
Oh, yeah. They found another mineral called Spinel.
Spinel, okay.
It's an oxide mineral that can form in a bunch of different ways. It can form under high pressure, high temperature, that sort of thing.
And what does the Spinel tell us?
Well, that's the interesting part. They're not entirely sure how it's related to the kaolinite.
Ah, okay.
Did it form first? Did the kaolinite form later? Are they connected somehow?
So more mysteries to solve?
Always, right.
Yeah.
That's what keeps things interesting.
Absolutely. Now, these weren't just a couple of random rocks, were they?
No. No, not at all.
It sounds like they found a lot of them.
Over 4,000 of these white rocks and pebbles, according to the paper.
Wow.
So this wasn't just a fluke.
Right.
It's a widespread phenomenon.
Right.
Something was happening on Mars that created a lot of these kaolinite-rich rocks. And I read that these rocks, while rich in kaolinite, are actually harder than kaolinite on Earth.
Oh, that's an interesting point.
Why is that?
Well, it probably means they've been through a lot. They've probably been compacted, maybe had other minerals fill in the spaces between them, basically making them more solid over time.
So their story is more complicated than just forming and sitting there.
For sure.
Yeah.
These rocks have a history.
Now, Roger Wiens made a really profound statement when he said, the big questions about Mars are about water.
He's absolutely right.
And how does the discovery of kaolinite tie into those questions?
Well, kaolinite needs water to form.
Right.
So finding it on Mars is like a smoking gun.
It suggests that there was liquid water on the surface.
And not just a little bit. We're talking potentially a lot of water over a long period of time.
So it supports the idea of a wetter past for Mars.
Definitely. But it also raises another interesting question. What's that? Where did all that water go?
Yeah.
Some of it might have escaped into space.
Right.
But some of it might still be there, locked away inside these minerals.
Oh,
So
interesting.
remember, kaolinite is a hydrated mineral.
Right.
It has water molecules trapped within its structure.
So it's like a reservoir of ancient Martian water.
Exactly. And that's something scientists are really keen to investigate.
Now let's talk about Jezero Crater.
Okay.
That's where Perseverance is currently exploring, right?
That's right.
How does this discovery tie into that location?
Well, it turns out that orbiting spacecraft have detected signs of kaolinite in the rim of Jezero Crater. And remember, these float rocks were found inside the crater.
Right.
So the thinking is that they might have eroded from the crater rim.
Like they were washed down or something.
Possibly.
And what happens if Perseverance actually finds these kaolinite-rich rocks in place in the crater rim?
That would be huge.
How so?
It would allow them to study the rocks in their original context. They could figure out their age, see how they relate to other rock layers, and get a really clear picture of the environment when they formed.
And that could tell us a lot about the habitability of ancient Mars, right?
Absolutely.
So all this talk about ancient water and warm environments, it really makes you think about the possibility of life.
It does, doesn't it?
What are the implications of these findings for the search for past life on Mars?
Well, we know that life as we know it needs water.
Right.
And these findings suggest that Mars had plenty of it in the past.
And not just water, but warm temperatures, too.
Exactly. So it's not crazy to think that microbial life could have existed there.
It makes those kaolinite-rich areas prime targets for future exploration, doesn't it?
Absolutely. They're like hotspots for potential biosignatures.
And it's not just about Mars.
What do you mean?
What we learn about Mars can actually tell us a lot about life in general.
Oh, yeah, totally.
By comparing Earth and Mars, we can start to understand what makes a planet habitable.
And what makes life possible.
It's a bigger picture kind of thing.
Absolutely. It's all connected.
So just to wrap things up, the discovery of these pale rocks, these kaolinite-rich rocks, it's a really big deal.
It is.
It suggests that Mars might have been a much warmer and wetter place in the past.
Right.
And that raises the possibility that life might have existed there.
Yeah. It makes you think, what else is out there?
Now, considering that kaolinite has water trapped inside it,
Right.
what other evidence could scientists look for to really nail down just how much water Mars had in its past?
Ooh, good question.
What kind of tests could they do on these rocks if they find them in their original location? Could they figure out, like, the temperature of the water, how long it was there?
That would be amazing.
What could those details tell us about the conditions necessary for life to emerge, not just on Mars, but maybe on other planets, too?
Those are the questions that keep me up at night.
Me too.
So much to learn, so much to explore.
Well, that about wraps up our deep dive for today.
It was a good one.
It was. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
And keep exploring the mysteries of Mars. Who knows what other secrets are waiting to be discovered?
Exactly. And maybe, just maybe, those secrets will tell us that we're not alone in the universe.
Now that's a thought to ponder.
It is.
Until next time, deep divers.
Keep diving.